Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone podcast. My name is Kathy. Having reviewed the transcript from the closed part of the hearing on the 23rd of January, when the defense was arguing part of their motion to suppress the DNA evidence from the case through the introduction of witness testimony. There were several witnesses that were on the stand that the defense called in support of their motion to suppress. Well, we had an opportunity to look at and to see what those witnesses testified to for the first time, and there is so much information that's in that transcript that I cannot recommend enough. If you have not yet had an opportunity to review it, I definitely ask that you do so. Now that I've had an opportunity to review not just what the witnesses have said, but also what the court addressed between the parties during the time period after the last witness had testified, and now they're getting ready to do a little bit of cleanup work before they're getting ready to go into open session. And at one point, Judge Stephen Hippler, I think, threw an important bone to the defense, which I wonder if they might have had an opportunity to possibly do much better on this motion to suppress the IGG. As we know from retrospect, that the court did go on to deny that motion. What I'm speaking of specifically is page 170 of the transcript, where the court is referencing his concerns over the standing issue. What standing did Mr. Kohberger have to argue a Fourth Amendment violation, that a warrant should have been issued before, number one, the trash was pulled from his parents' property? There was a bag of trash and some trash that was taken out and then sent back to ISP Labs in Idaho, which was tested. I'm not talking about that portion. I'm talking about the portion having to do with the sheath. Because the court here does say, where he says, I don't see that impacted here because it sounds like some of his DNA was in that trash. Here's the important part. And then there's the standing issue, as I understand it, related to the extent that the defense is not conceding that the DNA on the sheath was Mr. Kohberger's, and he has no position to object to the testing of the DNA and the sheath. This is between lines 4 and 10 of that page of the transcript. The court in the afternoon also raised the standing issue. And the concern here is that it didn't appear that Ms. Taylor, at least in my opinion, addressed the standing issue. And now we're finding out that the court raised it not once in the afternoon, but had also raised it in the morning session, where perhaps there might have been an opportunity to get with the other attorney. Say he keeps arguing standing, he's arguing standing, what could we possibly do? And it just seems that in the afternoon she didn't argue what standing did he have to object to a distant relative, even assuming arguendo that it was his distant relative who decides to spit in a tube, send some money off to one of these companies that do these testing, and will come back and give you your family tree. What standing did he have to object to that? Maybe come up with some type of a first impression, first time argument like, well, assuming that's my distant relative, he's sending my DNA to be tested too, or at least a portion of it, because it's shared DNA, and I certainly didn't sign a release for it to be tested. At least something like that gets your foot in the door to argue what the court now has said to defense, not once but twice. What are you going to do about standing? The defense has not had a very good record since the case was transferred from the Latah County venue to Ada. They lost all of the motions to strike the DP last fall, now all of the motions to suppress, and I wonder if at least the suppression on the IGG motion might have been won if the standing issue was argued. What do you think? Again, we're giving our opinions under the First Amendment, as we always do. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this matter. And this will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone podcast. My name's Kathy. Thanks for joining us here today.